Amy Smith from Brubakers Sewing. I'm also known as Mrs. Creepy. You probably haven't met me, but you've met Uncle Creepy. So I'm here to talk to you about oiling your Pfaff sewing machine. Do you ever find that your fabric, you're finding loops on the bottom of your fabric? Maybe irregular loops, it'll sew nice for a while and then loop and sew nice again. That can be caused by forgetting to oil your hook. It can also be caused by over-oiling your hook. The Pfaff hook is a very precise part of the sewing machine. We actually call it the heart of the sewing machine because it's really doing all the work. The hook, along with the needle, is doing all the work in your machine. So I'm going to talk to you today in this very short video about how to oil your machine, how often, and how much. Where to oil your machine is down here in your hook. This is your hook area, and I'm going to show you some close-ups also, but this is just going to be a general overview. So you want to oil in your hook, and as you see, the outer hook will move and the inner hook, the inner part will not. The outer part that's moving is called your hook, and the inner part that's not moving is your hook basket. And the piece I just took out is your bobbin case, and this is your bobbin. So those are the four components of your hook. When you oil your hook, you want to place a drop of oil along the ridge where your outer ring is moving, where the hook is moving. Or alternatively, you can oil inside. There's a little hole in here where you can oil. But ideally, you should try to put one drop right on the rim of your hook. I like to use the zoom spout because you can open this up and really get in there and just place one drop in your hook area. You must use only sewing machine oil. Sewing machine oil is a very light grade oil, and if you use too heavy an oil, it's going to cause drag on your hook. Some of the biggest mistakes we see out there are people use 3-in-1 oil in their hook. 3-in-1 oil is not actually an oil, it's a solvent, and so it's actually going to dry it out more than it's going to lubricate it. It's for taking off rust and things like that. Never use 3-in-1 on your sewing machine. I know a lot of people like to use tri-flow lubricant, and we don't recommend that either. We recommend just sewing machine oil. And the zoom spout is the easiest one to get, the most prevalent, and we do sell that. But you can, you can find other kinds of sewing machine oil also. Has to be sewing machine oil. Another little tool that's nice to have is a dental pick. And these are nice for picking out your threads and cleaning the lint out of your feed dogs. And it's just one of those tools that are nice to have around. So I'm using it for a pointer today. So we've placed a drop of oil in our hook, even though you didn't see me do it. I'll demonstrate it later. After you've placed a drop of oil in your hook, you want to thread your machine up, and you want to test sew on a scrap of fabric to work that oil through. So we're going to get her threaded up here. And if you saw my threading video, you must always thread with the presser foot up, with the take-up lever high, and thread with two hands all the way to the bottom of the machine, where you're going to use your needle threader to thread your needle. So now we're ready to go. We're going to go to a regular straight stitch. You're going to take a scrap of fabric and a moderately small stitch length, 1.5 to 2.0, and you're going to run the stitch back and forth until you fill up your scrap fabric with stitches. So you want to do this all the way across this piece of fabric. And this, I'm not going to fill the whole thing up because you don't need to see that. But the fabric is about 6 inches by 4 inches folded in half. So you're going to fill this fabric up with your threads, stitching, and what that's doing is it's working the oil throughout the hook itself. Once you've completed that, you're ready to start your sewing project. So that is how to oil it, and I'm going to get into the ifs, ands, buts, and wheres in 1 second. We're going to reset the camera for a close-up. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the hook specifically. This is an entire hook assembly that we took out of a 1222 so that you could see how it works. You have your shaft, which is turning the outer part of the hook, and the inner part, which is the hook basket, remains stationary. Now, this is considered a high-speed rotary, industrial rotary hook. As some of you may or may not know, Pfaff started out as an industrial company, and then they began building household machines too. But they took a lot of their components directly off the stock shelf from the industrial division, and the hook was one of them. So it's considered a high-speed rotary. What we mean by that is that when your machine is running, the hook is running 2 times the rotation of the up and down of the needle. So if your machine is sewing 800 stitches per minute, your hook is actually turning 1600 stitches per minute. So it's actually turning around. I'm going to get very technical here. This is the pointy part. And the pointy part is actually the tip of the hook, and that comes around, and then as it reaches the top, your needle comes down, it comes in behind the needle, picks up the thread, carries it around, mates it with the bobbin thread, and then brings it up and releases it, and you have your first stitch. So put that in real fast speed, and that's how the sewing machine works. The hook is the heart of the machine, and the needle and the hook make up the 2 most important components of the sewing machine itself. So obviously, with this being all metal, all metal hook basket and hook itself, it does require oiling. Now there's 2 places that you can oil it, and I'm going to pull up a disassembled hook here so you can see that. This was a hook from a 1222, and this is a hook from a 1400 series. They're virtually identical. There's some small changes, but not many. So we've disassembled it so you have the hook and the hook basket, and then there's also an outer ring called a gib that fits in here and holds the 2 pieces together. But your hook, if you notice here, it has 3 ridges on here, and these are actually little knives. And these knives, the purpose of these knives is to cut your thread. If you happen to get a thread jam as your hook is turning, it's going to cut those threads and you can continue to sew. If you get a really bad thread jam, you can try to manipulate your hook to cut those threads, but if you push it too far, you're going to strip your gears, so you have to be real careful about that. But those are industrial features that were put on this hook. So the ideal place to oil your hook would be right along this ridge here. Place a drop of oil, and as the hook is turning, the oil has settled in those little cutters, and as the hook is turning, it's going to spread the oil throughout the circumference of the hook itself. The other place that you can oil is right here, and this is your center hole where your hook basket meets the back of the hook, and you can place a drop of oil right in here, and then through centrifugal force of the outer hook turning, the hook turning, it's gonna bring the oil around to where it belongs as well. The most important thing is that you oil it on a regular basis, because if you do not, your hook is going to get very dry, it's going to sound real rattly, and if it gets super dry, it's going to start screeching, and eventually it'll just seize up on you. And you don't want that to happen, because not only is this a work of art in terms of precision, it's also very expensive, and you don't want to have to try to replace this. So take care of your machine, and your machine will take care of you. How often do you want to oil? The book is really clear about that. It says often. And like everything else, often can be interpreted in many different ways. Often to one person is never, and it's a half a bottle a day to somebody else. So often to me is the easiest way to remember. We used to say every 8 hours of sewing time, of running time, is how often you should oil your hook. For me, that's just too much to remember because I don't sew every day, and even if I don't sew, that oil can evaporate. It's a very thin grade oil. So the easiest way for me to remember is to put one small drop in the machine every time I sit down to sew. So I'll put the one small drop in here in my hook, as I demonstrated before, thread the machine up, run some fabric back and forth to work that oil in, and then it's ready to go. And if you do one small drop of oil, not a big drop, not a big squirt, just one small drop of oil each time you sew, you're not going to be over oiling and you're not going to be under oiling. And the machine is going to take care of you and while you take care of your machine. So that is the importance of oiling it. And the other thing that I want to stress is to change your needle every time you start a new project. Change your needle and do not save that needle. You throw that needle away. Whatever you paid for your machine, it was a big investment. And a needle isn't even going to cost you 60 cents to replace. The needle moves up and down very quickly. It builds up a lot of heat. It loses its temperance, and if you don't change your needle, you're going to have some stitch issues down the road. So the first thing you should always do is oil your hook and change your needle. And then the other thing that I would like to stress is to please don't fool with your tension. If your stitch looks bad on your fabric and you have loops on the bottom, don't start by changing your tension. Start by placing a drop of oil, changing your needle, rethreading your machine, and 99 times out of 100, that's going to take care of your problem. If you continue to have issues after that, then it's time to take your machine to your local dealer, or call us and you can send it to us and we'll fix it for you. We'll have a link of our website and our phone number at the bottom of in the description area of the video. We'll also have some links where you can get these products, such as the Zoom Spout. And we hope you'll visit our website because we try to put a lot of good information on there as well. So thank you for visiting with us, and I hope you find this helpful, and we'll see you next time.